Welcome, everyone. Good morning. Almost good afternoon right now for us here in Minnesota. I'm going to give everybody a chance to kind of hop on here. Welcome. We're going to get started right away. We have a lot of content to cover, so I'm going to get going here. Welcome to this webinar, The Research and Development of Positive Recovery Journaling, a new journaling practice to support well-being, hosted in partnership with the Center for Advanced Studies in Child Welfare, also known as CASHU, at the University of Minnesota. We are a research and training center located in the School of Social Work at the university, and we partner with faculty to translate research to practice, specifically to child welfare issues. And this training is funded through Title IV federal funding and the Minnesota Department of Human Services. I'm just gonna say a few quick housekeeping. Again, welcome, we're glad you're here. This webinar is being recorded and it will be sent out to all registrants. Dr. Krentzman will also provide a copy of the PowerPoint and we will email that out as well. Please use the chat for discussion and comments, as well as the Q&A function for the questions you might have. And Dr. Krentzman can answer questions throughout the presentation. Please stay tuned for an evaluation at the end of the webinar. For those of you who are interested in receiving a CEU, you will need to stay for the whole webinar as we track attendance via Zoom minutes. And then Dr. Krentzman will present for about 45-50 minutes, and then there'll be 5 to 10 minutes at the end for additional Q&A and that evaluation. If you need any other accommodations during this webinar, please don't hesitate to chat me. So I'd like to introduce Dr. Amy Krentzman. Amy is an associate professor of social work at the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities, and she studies addiction recovery. She has conducted research on spirituality, gratitude, forgiveness, sober living, houses, mutual aid programs, recovery in rural communities, and journaling to support addiction recovery. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you so much, Stacy, and welcome everyone who is here. I will go ahead and get started. Just a mention about the quote you see on the screen, it makes you feel much better about life. This was some feedback I received about this journaling practice that I'll be telling you about today from one of the research participants in one of my studies. I first want to acknowledge that I am speaking to you today from the traditional homelands of the Dakota people, land on which the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities, and the School of Social Work was built and remains. In the chat, I'm going to share with you a lovely map of my area and just express a moment of relief with the news that ICWA was upheld by the Supreme Court that we learned this morning. Thank you very much, Stacy, for the warm introduction. I think now people understand what I do. I teach at the School of Social Work and I study addiction recovery, including interventions that support the ongoing maintenance of prosperous and thriving recovery. I want to pause and take a moment to express some thanks. My first heartfelt thanks goes out to you, the participants in this webinar, child welfare workers, social welfare workers. I understand there are some parent allies among us here in the audience, and mental health professionals. Thank you so very much from the bottom of my heart for all you do for children and families. It's truly awesome, and I'm humbled to be with you today. I want to thank my research collaborators, research assistants, and the wonderful treatment providers who have invited me into their facilities and permitted me to conduct research studies with their clients. A huge thank you to the Center for Advanced Studies in Child Welfare, to the staff who helped make this webinar possible, and the webinar we're going to have next week. I'll tell you more about that, and who helped me produce these lovely journals that you were able to receive from us. I'm so happy that we were able to work together to produce these beautiful journals. I've always printed up journals for my research study, but they've never looked this beautiful before. They've never had the instructions in the front before for how to use the journal. And this was all out of the gracious and generous collaboration with my friends at CASHU. And it was a lot of fun. to produce these journals in collaboration with my friends. I want to recognize Suki Park, the research assistant who helped me over the past years, and Kelly Frayne of Modern Press. That's the publisher, the printer, who actually did a great job printing the journals. So you might have received your journal already in the mail today, in time for today. You don't need it for today if it's still on its way to you in the mail. A moment to thank some of the artists who helped produce the journal. Katie Lowery did the watercolor print on the cover. Sarah Emma Regalado did the interior art, and she is a tattoo artist. And Karen Sheehan did the graphic design. So let's get down to what we'll do today together in this hour. I'm going to introduce to you the idea of journaling as a tool to support well-being. Now, my research is on people in recovery from addiction, but this tool that we developed to support people in recovery is actually useful for all people. So I'll be telling you about that, introducing you to it, and showing you all the aspects of it, and then telling you about 2 pilot studies I conducted on the intervention and what we found out from those studies. Now, please join us next week, a week from today. We'll meet again on Zoom. And what we're going to do next week is we're actually going to journal together. So next week, if you have your journal with you, that would be great. Or if you have a regular blank piece of paper, that will also work. That's kind of the format. Today is sort of more of a lecture, but I really welcome your comments and your questions in the chat or in the question and answer box. And stop me in the middle with your questions as I'm talking today. But then next week, we'll get out our pens and our journals, and we'll actually journal together for the hour. That's the plan. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, Stacy, did you have anything else you wanted to say at this point?
Just 2 logistical pieces. If you requested a journal at registration, you should have received one in the mail. If you did not receive a journal and requested one, please do email us at cashew@umn.edu. We'll put that in the chat. And then, as Amy mentioned, there is an upcoming training next week at this time, and you can register at the Zoom link that we'll also put in the chat, and we will email that out to folks as well. So a lot of you indicated you were interested in the June 22nd training, and it's a meeting format, and that's why we're having folks register this way. So we'll put that in the chat as well, and please feel free to email us with any questions. I already see Sean. I'm so glad you're here. You have a question if there is an opportunity to order additional journals, and why don't we connect? There's while supplies last, we may be able to get folks journals. So please email me, Sean, and I can respond to you as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Stacy. So let's go ahead and start talking about journaling. What is journaling? If we ask any of us here today, can you describe journaling? We would probably say something like you open up a blank notebook and you take your pen and you write down, you pour out all of your thoughts and feelings. That's probably essentially what we would say if we were going to define journaling. I noticed there was a definition for journal therapy, which involves writing about internal experiences, thoughts, and feelings to help people become aware of what they are feeling and why they are feeling it, to validate their experiences and their sense of self, and to increase self-knowledge, with the idea that such writing is therapeutic. Let's have a poll question now for you. My question for you is, I have right now, or I have had in the past, a regular journaling practice. Would you say yes or no? Okay, I think I'll end the poll there and I'll show you the results. The majority of people, well, really just about more than 50% have or have had a regular journaling practice. So for a large number of you, 44%, the journaling practice that I'll be introducing you to today might be one of your first times trying journaling. Okay. Out there in the public on the bookshelves of Barnes and Noble, on Amazon, you're going to find currently a lot of different kinds of journaling. There's bullet journaling, which is really a productivity method. There's the Monk Manual, which is a way of scheduling activities and planning, as well as includes some gratitude aspects. You might have heard of Julia Cameron's work called The Artist's Way, and she recommends morning pages. Morning pages are when you first wake up as early as possible in the morning. You free write for at least 3 pages. You pour out whatever comes up for you. You don't try to control it. You just pour out whatever comes up for you, and you don't stop. You keep the pen moving until you complete 3 pages, and that is designed to support creativity. Even Oprah has recently come out with a guided journal called The Life You Want Planner. We'll move on now to a second poll question. I have recommended journaling to clients. Yes, no, or not applicable. Great. I will end the poll right about there and show the results. And what we see is that the majority have recommended journaling to clients. Another poll question: if you have recommended journaling to clients, you taught them how to journal, or you recommended a specific approach? Yes, no, or not applicable. Okay, I'll end the poll there. What I find interesting is I think we basically understand what it means to journal. If a friend tells us, I recommend you journal about that, we kind of know what they mean. But an area of research that I'm very interested in is how can people benefit from journaling if they are given specific instructions for how to do it? So there's a presumption we know how, but is that really true that we know how? And if we give some supportive instruction, can people get even more benefit from it? That's something I'm super interested in learning. So as a journaling researcher, I have tried out a good number of different kinds of approaches to journaling. And my consensus is that there are common elements to all forms of journaling. First of all, there's this sense of privacy, that what I'm writing, no one else is going to be seeing. So therefore, it's a safe space, and I can really say anything. I can say things that I might not be able to say aloud to any other person who might be listening or reading. There's a sense of self-expression, certainly, that as I write, I can pour out everything I'm feeling. There's this idea of insight that if I keep a journal, if I write things down, I might develop novel ideas about myself or insights into what's going on with me, and those insights can be useful. And finally, this sense of true self, that when I'm journaling, I'm not in any of my formal or informal roles in life. I really can be my authentic self and express that truth on the pages. So I was motivated to create a journaling practice specifically to support recovery. My idea was to leverage these different aspects of journaling and tailor them so they specifically support recovery and have a more positive orientation. A lot of people, when we think about journaling, we think about journaling when we're upset, when we feel upset and we want to pour out some of our negative emotion, which has been found to be a useful and supportive practice. But because people in early recovery from addiction suffer kind of a preponderance of negative mood for a whole host of reasons, I felt that the journaling practice for them would be most helpful if it had a structure that skewed their writing toward what was going well and what is positive now. So this was some of my thinking getting started. Positive Recovery Journaling, which is my name for the journal that you hold in front of you and what I'll be presenting today. It was built on a foundation of existing research. I'll tell you a little bit about that next. There is a type of research you might be familiar with, an intervention called behavioral activation. Behavioral activation involves helping people to plan and enact rewarding and important activities that flow from their most important values. And so that was a foundation idea that influenced the positive recovery journaling. Another foundation idea were ideas from positive psychology. Positive psychology is a relatively new subset of the field of psychology. It's designed to improve mood and well-being by way of gratitude practices, acts of kindness, savoring positive things that have happened, and identifying a person's strengths. Now, both of these fields of research have shown that they can improve a person's mood, reduce depressive feelings, and also have an impact, a favorable impact on addictive behavior, reducing addictive behavior. So both of these independently had these kind of promising findings from previous research. And both of these sources, behavioral activation and positive psychology, their interventions by definition almost involve writing something down. There has also been a host of existing research on journaling itself. And one of the major types of journaling that has been researched is something called expressive writing. Expressive writing involves the negative. It involves writing about very traumatic experiences every day for 15 to 20 minutes for 3 to 5 days. So expressive writing, for the most part, focuses on that expression of negative emotion, which has been found to benefit physical and, in some studies, psychological health. On the right side of the slide, you see another type of journaling that has received attention in the research literature. That is interactive journaling. This is when your client gets kind of a colorful magazine, and inside the magazine are short didactic or informational blurbs that are easy to read, easy to digest. And then in the journal, the person is asked specific questions about that information and they respond in writing. And this type of an intervention has been shown to improve knowledge about alcohol and alcohol problems and foster a willingness to change and reduce recidivism if someone has gotten into legal trouble because of substance use. So all of this research taken together helped me to develop the intervention. Expressive writing has focused mostly on negative events. Well, what about a journaling practice that focuses on what's going right in recovery? Interactive journaling has focused primarily on the initiation of behavior change, becoming more willing to seek help. Well, what about a journaling practice that focuses on the maintenance of recovery that's already underway, even if it's early recovery? And positive psychological and behavioral activation interventions have shown benefit for people with addictions. What would happen if we combined them? So that then all of these ideas together came into the soup that produced positive recovery journaling. So let me orient you to the main positive recovery journaling page. This is what it looks like. A lovely illustration here of pine trees by Sarah Emma Regalado. And this is your basic journaling page. The spiral binding down the middle represents now, the present moment. And when you interact with your journal, you will discover over time whether you enjoy journaling in the morning or in the evening. maybe in the middle of the night if you can't sleep, maybe some other time of the day. But you always face your journal. It's always now, the present moment. And it's always possible on the left-hand side of the page to review the past 24 hours and on the right-hand side of the page to plan the upcoming 24 hours. That's the basic structure of the journaling page. On the left-hand side of the page, there are 2 gratitude exercises where people are asked to make a list. And again, this procedure uses only bullet pointed lists. People don't have to write longhand. They don't have to write whole paragraphs. It only uses bullet points and short lists. A list of looking back, good things that happened in the past day, a list of what a person is grateful for now, a list of what didn't go so well over the past day, which has some benefit to capture not only the good, but also have a place to express what did not go well. There's several benefits to that. And a place to express good wishes for other people. So to stop thinking about one's self for a moment and think of other people who are suffering now and make a list of such people. And in so doing, we review the past 24 hours. Then coming to plan the upcoming 24 hours. What's useful about this is it's designed to inspire a balanced upcoming day. So we usually think of our to-do list as this rigorous kind of unrelenting list of things we have to do. But this is designed to be different. This is designed to plan a day so that it is balanced. Work and education appears on the bottom so that you can make that list of things you need to do for your work or your job or school. But also you can include tasks for home and housing, enjoyment and recreation, things that will make you happy today, things to support health, things to support recovery. So the recovery aspect helps people in recovery to plan something today that will be supportive of their recovery specifically. Spirituality has been shown to be a strong component of recovery for many people. So a place here to plan any spiritual activities if a person wishes to include those. Anything to do that would support a healthy community, defined any way, in any way, either neighborhood or sober living house, or make your voice heard on an important current issue. Social includes any social activities, interactions with other people. Amends and money and abundance would be pay that bill or cash that check that came in. And amends and repair is included in case people in recovery are in 12-step programs and they're practicing the 10th step, which invites them to make amends for anything that has gone slightly off the rails in their lives that day. There's also 2 sections for people to write in their own category. So this is the basic journaling structure. And there's been a host of additional research on each element of the journaling structure. Gratitude practices have been found to improve mood and well-being and can strengthen relationships. Writing about upsetting things can be beneficial. Self-expression relieves the pressure of holding things in. Loving kindness meditations, putting out good wishes for others, has been shown to improve mood and self-compassion. And doing things that are enjoyable and important to you each day can help you feel better. Making progress on personal goals has been associated with increases in happiness. And acts of kindness and helpfulness toward others can increase the happiness of the person who has been kind. So a little more on some of the research findings that underpin all the various aspects of the journaling practice. I want to say a word or two about this approach to journaling and how it's relevant for everyone. So start by saying how it's relevant to people in early recovery from addiction. It can help people to improve their mood, but that's useful for everyone. It can help clarify what is most important to them. Again, that's useful for everyone. It can help people take small steps in the direction of things that are important to them. It can help people discover how to have fun without drugs or alcohol, help people to plan a balanced day, It can emphasize the idea that life in recovery is better than life in active addiction. It can help people to remember to do things that are important to them. It can help them to examine what has not gone well. And most of these benefits are true for all people. I want to next show you a composite entry of a positive recovery journaling journaling page that has already been filled out. This handwriting is mine, but the items you see are from people in my research study. So I'll just be silent for just a couple of seconds to give you a chance to read what others have written. You'll notice some changes in what you see compared with your new journal, and that is the result of feedback we received from the research study on ways to improve the journal. There's another aspect of the journal. If you have your journal with you and you go to the pages at the end, the pages that say choose one life area that is especially important to you now, this is an aspect of the journaling where people in my research studies have had the chance to write about one aspect of life that's most important to them now, and then develop action items that they can take, steps they can take to move their life in alignment with their vision of what they want in recovery. It's a very powerful exercise. Again, I'll just be silent so you can have a few seconds to read over this composite example. In the research, we teach people how to take their initial ideas for action items and rewrite them, basically so that they're SMART goals here on the right, so that they will have more success getting something done that's meaningful to them. And don't forget, small, successful progress is related to increases in happiness. So they would get a feeling of reward right away, even if their goal is more of a long-term goal, which is important, I think, for all of us. So if you don't mind, let's go ahead and take a minute. I mean, it'll be next week when we really go through the journaling together in a lot of detail, but either in your journal or in just a scrap of paper you might have handy right now, let's just take a moment to get a taste of what this feels like to actually do the journaling. Review the past 24 hours approximately, roughly the past day, and list some good things that happened. And the key here is that small things count. Here are some examples. I slept well, my new reading chair is working well, and I thoroughly enjoyed my new book. Take a moment and think back over the past day. What are 3 good things that happened, and write them down. Okay, take just a moment to wrap up that last thought. And we'll move on now with the lecture material. I'm going to give you an overview of the 2 pilot studies of positive recovery journaling. So the first study I conducted over on the left was conducted in 2019 before the pandemic, so everything took place in person. It took place in a residential treatment center for women who faced substance use disorders. We looked to see if the journaling would be acceptable to them and if the women could do it. And we looked at whether the journaling was associated with positive change. The second study I conducted was conducted during COVID. So COVID was a surprise, and we had to do all of the activities remotely online. It was conducted remotely. It was 1 residential site and 2 intensive outpatient treatment sites for addiction. We included people of all gender identities, and we cared about feasibility and acceptability also, but we looked also on preliminary evidence of impact of journaling on well-being outcomes. I'll be showing you the results of both of these studies. Sample characteristics for both studies follow. Both groups were approximately of the same average age. Both groups really showed people who had low annual household income in the previous year as a majority. Years of education was just a bit above high school education. The interesting thing to note is that the first study, people were earlier on in their recovery journal at about 48 days of sobriety at baseline, at the beginning of the study. In the second study, people were mixed. They were earlier on in recovery, but some had more length of recovery when they joined the study. So their average length of sobriety at baseline was 140 days. And both populations, these were people who had repeatedly been in treatment before, and this on average was their 6th treatment episode. In both studies, all the people in the study were already in treatment, and also they joined my study and did the journaling. So journaling is thought to be adjunctive or on top of treatment as usual. It's not meant to be a substitute for treatment as usual. In terms of racial and ethnic identity, more or less, the people in my research studies mirrored the population of the treatment centers from which they were recruited. Okay, my first study, which was published as an academic article, if you'd like to read that article, email me and let me know. This was the study of 15 women in residential treatment. And let me show you the design of this study. We met the women face to face, and they did a baseline screening, a questionnaire, and were determined to be eligible for this study. And then they joined me for a journaling group that was 8 sessions long. And in these 8 sessions, I taught them how to use the journal that you have over 8 sessions. I'd teach them a little bit, and we would journal together. We would read out what we had written. The next day that we met, we would learn a little bit more, another aspect of the journaling. And over 8 sessions, they learned all how to do it. Then they journaled on their own every day for 14 days. And then we interviewed them to see what their experience was like. So first of all, they rated the journaling as with a range of 0 to 10 as fairly easy, not that difficult, and fairly satisfying, pleasant, helpful. And they put in a fair amount of effort into the journaling. There are quantitative results and qualitative results. The quantitative results show that while they were with me in the study over that month, they also experienced improvement in satisfaction with life, well-being, reward from the environment, happiness with recovery, confidence staying sober, and decreases in depression. So concurrent with learning the journaling, there were all these indicators of positive change in other well-being areas. Now, this doesn't mean that the journaling caused these positive improvements, but we take this as an optimistic signal. It shows no one got worse while they were journaling. They either stayed the same or they got better. Don't forget they were in treatment, and treatment was for these women all day long in that residential facility. So a lot was working together to help these women thrive. In terms of qualitative results, what did the women say about using this journaling? They really universally said that they realized that more good things than bad things were happening. Without really knowing it in advance, what they were doing is they were looking at their good things list and comparing it to their bad things list. And they fully expected that their bad things list was going to be longer than their good things list. So they were surprised to find that in their very own handwriting, they couldn't argue with it. It was in their own handwriting that their good things list was longer than their bad things list. And this came as a surprise, and a welcome surprise. Many also stated that there was more to be grateful for than they realized. They didn't realize how much there was to be grateful for. And many said that in the context of all this positive stuff on the journaling page, that the bad things that they listed stopped feeling like bad things. They started to feel more like learning experiences. They sort of lost their negative bite. And there is research to show that that kind of thing can happen. When people are strengthened in other ways, then something threatening or difficult appears less and is experienced as less menacing. And we saw that going on in the journaling. Some specific quotes for the women. As far as the right-hand side of the page, they used it as a planner and they wrote things down that they wanted to do. And when they wrote it down, they got it done. And when they got it done, they felt so good about themselves. They typically felt really bad about themselves if they had to do something and they forgot to do it. They felt really bad about that. So the journal helped them remember and get things done. They admitted that they have a bad memory. Someone says, I write things I need to do on Post-it notes and I throw it in a drawer. So her drawer is messy, but she throws everything in there. And someone else said, I remembered so many things that I've been forgetting for months. And this caused a buildup of self-esteem as we observed it. There were some critiques of positive recovery journaling. I'm keeping my eye on the time. We're doing great on time. It's good to show a balanced picture of what people said. Some complained that it was repetitive. And what can happen with a gratitude list is you can put down the same things every day, and those things can start to feel a little stale after a while, even if they're magnificent things that you're writing down. So one thing we do is we try to help people to remember to write down the smallest possible thing they can think of to be grateful for. And that can generate some freshness to the gratitude list. But some of their feeling that it was repetitive could have been because they were in residential treatment, which was somewhat restricted in terms of what they could do in a day. They nearly all said they weren't yet ready to make amends, so that section wasn't so useful to them. They would get busy and forget to do the journaling, and then they'd feel bad about not doing the journaling. And one person expressed she had the desire to write in more depth rather than just to make bullet pointed lists. So let's pause now before I tell you about the second study, and let's get just another small taste of what it's like to do this journaling. So on a regular scratch sheet of paper or the journal that you have, under things that I am grateful for, think of things that you usually take for granted. This is something I wrote a bit ago. Sunny winter days like today, the pleasure I'm getting from a new cup of tea, and my colleague who has such a positive attitude. And again, think of things that you're grateful for, but try to think of the smallest possible thing you can think of. Go ahead and write that. Let's take a few minutes now to do that together. Make a list of things that you're grateful for. I'm listing my friends and colleagues at Cashew, and go ahead and wrap up that last thought. And we'll move on to my presentation of the second study that I conducted. This study was different from the first one in that it had a control group. So we had people doing the journaling just like in the first study, but this time we also had a group that did not do the journaling, so we could compare the two groups. It's the main difference. So here's that structure, the outline of the study. People were met and screened and then randomized. If they got into the gold group, they just filled out this rather extensive battery of questionnaires that assessed a lot of different dimensions of recovery. Researchers have found that recovery from addiction is not only defined by the absence of pathology or the absence of consumption of substances, but also the presence of well-being. So when we measure recovery, how is recovery going? We want to ask about the absence of pathology, but we also want to ask a lot about what's going well right now. So this is a change in definition of recovery and a change in measurement. So we had a lot of things that we asked people about. How is life going in recovery? And they filled out those questionnaires every day if they were in the control group. If they were in the treatment group, we called it the maroon group, they got a journal in the mail, just like you did this week when you got your journal in the mail. They joined me on Zoom for that 8-session journaling group to learn how to use each aspect of the journal. Then they journaled on their own for 2 weeks. Then we evaluated everyone. And a month later, we evaluated everyone again. At that point, the control group got the journal in the mail, so they could benefit from the journaling too. So now we can compare these elements of what we call feasibility and acceptability between the treatment and the control group. So here we find that the treatment group put in a little more effort than the control group. That makes sense. We asked them to do a lot more work, but that difference was not what we call statistically significantly different. They found their activity just as easy as the people who were just filling out the questionnaires, just as difficult, which is not terribly much difficult, but they found the journaling more satisfying, more pleasant, and more helpful than the group who was just filling out those multidimensional questionnaires to assess recovery. So we also looked at the period between recruitment and the exit interview to see about the impact of journaling on well-being. And I'll show you those results, but I want to step back for a moment and tell you a little bit about some of the things we were thinking in terms of the impact of the journaling. We were able to measure some aspects of the journaling. We asked people in the treatment group and in the control group whether they stopped to think over the past day. And if they were doing the journaling, they were definitely doing that. We asked them if they wrote a list of things they're grateful or thankful for. And if they were doing the journaling, they definitely would say yes to that. They thought of people in need and in my mind sent them good wishes. Again, that's the good wishes for others section of the journaling. If they were journaling, they definitely were going to do that. I made a list of at least one thing I wanted to do that I'd find pleasurable. So that's the right-hand page, the recreation or joy section. I wrote down things I wanted to get done in the near future. That would be the right-hand side of the journal. I directly wished someone well in person or by phone, text, or internet. That would be the social aspect of the right-hand side of the journal, with these first 3 questions related to the left-hand side and the other questions related to the right-hand side. And then we added up their responses. And we, instead of just asking them yes, no, we asked them leaning toward no, definitely no, leaning toward no, unsure, leaning toward yes, or definitely yes. So we made a score from 0 to 24 about the extent to which people were doing these sorts of activities directly associated to the journaling. And one thing we found, let me orient you to what you're seeing, this matrix of correlations. Each dot that you see is one of the research participants. So over here on the left, this shows, and on the x-axis for each of these is this composite of those items I showed you on the previous slide, the extent to which they were doing each of those things. And this shows that the more they were doing those things, and when I say those things, I mean these things. So the more they did those things, the more they felt positive affect. The more they did those things, the more they felt a sense of serenity. The more they did those things, the more they felt satisfaction with life. Because here you see the dots aligning more or less in a pattern that starts low and ends high. That's a positive correlation. The more they did those things, the more they felt happy with their recovery. These are the ones highlighted are the things that were statistically significant. The more they did those things, the more they felt committed to their sobriety. The more they did those things, the less depressed they felt. Here you see more or less a pattern of the dots aligning on a pattern where it would start high and go low. That means the more they did those things, the less depression they felt. The more they did those things, the more they felt a sense of flourishing. And the more they did those things, the more they felt a sense of gratitude. So these are how the elements of the journaling are associated with different aspects of well-being. So what did we find when we compared the treatment group to the control group? Well, we found on the far left, in the far left column, we saw no differences for those items positive affect, serenity, commitment to sobriety, gratitude, or flourishing. The control group and the treatment group were exactly the same. The control group did better than the treatment group on some things. They had less urges for drugs and alcohol. They were happier with recovery, and they had greater confidence staying sober. So this is not what you hypothesize when you do a research study, but sometimes you have an unexpected finding, something you didn't expect, and then you drill down to figure out what happened. But the journaling group did do better than the control group on a longer list of well-being indicators. The first three represent mood, negative affect. They had less negative affect, less depression, and less anxiety. They had greater satisfaction with life. They had a larger sense that life is better now in recovery than it was in active addiction, and they had greater satisfaction with treatment. None of these differences were statistically significant. We're looking at a trend at the level of a small effect size. So in some ways, we found that they did a little better if they were in the journaling group. I see our time, so I'm going to sort of speed through the last few points here. We did notice when we did an analysis of only those people who had less than 90 days of sobriety at baseline, that the journaling had a more pronounced positive impact on them across all well-being indicators. So here, negative affect, the journaling group is in red at the bottom here. They had less negative affect throughout the study than the control group if they had less than 90 days of recovery. Here it shows that the people who journaled had less depression, less anxiety, fewer urges for drugs and alcohol, a greater sense of flourishing, greater happiness with recovery, and greater confidence staying sober, and greater commitment to sobriety. So why didn't we see stronger effects for the whole sample taken together? There's a couple of reasons that we figured out. And this is a poster I'll be presenting at the end of this month in Seattle at the Research Society on Alcohol conference. So other recovery activities likely encouraged positive recovery journaling type of activities, like keeping track of your appointments, keeping a gratitude list, reaching out to others, wishing others well. Mutual aid meetings like AA and NA could have also gotten everyone, the treatment group and the control group, to do these sorts of behaviors. And the host treatment center could have been recommending these kind of behaviors also. The other thing is that the control group told us that just filling out those questionnaires boosted their sense of recovery and strengthened their recovery. So this was an unexpected finding. It's not something we planned. It's not something we would have planned if we knew it was going to happen. But just filling out the surveys, for most of the people in the control group, they felt that filling out the surveys gave them a boost. So journaling gave people a boost, filling out the surveys gave them a boost, and we didn't see that many differences between the treatment and the control group unless we looked at only those in the earlier stages of recovery. And this is a blow up from that poster showing that the majority of people in the control group, this large slice of the pie, felt they got a high level of benefit from filling out the questionnaires alone. In conclusion, positive recovery journaling practices were associated with a wide range of well-being factors. Positive recovery journaling was found to be more satisfying, pleasant, and helpful than recovery questionnaires. It's likely that other therapeutic activities, the survey items, mutual aid meetings, and host treatment center recommendations activated the same kind of activities that the journaling activated. The journaling might be most impactful for those who haven't yet successfully engaged in other recovery activities. I invite you now to join us next week when we meet at the same time to journal together. And when we journal together, we did a little taste of journaling together today, but when we journal together next week, we're going to go in more depth, and I'm going to sprinkle in all the tips and insights from all of the research I've done and my own personal practice of using the journaling. So that's what we'll do together. Please join us next week. I'm conducting a new study where I'll be teaching providers how to use the journaling and how to lead one of those 8-session journaling groups for their clients. If you're interested, you can fill out a brief questionnaire at this Z link. And I'll type this into the chat a little bit later. And now we're going to pause and invite you to fill out a brief evaluation of today's webinar. And while you're doing that, I would be very, very happy to hear your comments, your questions. Please put them in the chat or in the Q&A, and I'll be very happy to hear what you have to say. Thank you for being here today, everyone. I'm seeing some expressions of thanks. Thanks for the planner. Wonderful to have you with us today. And any other questions at all? Thanks for the kind words.
Thanks, Amy. I'm just wondering if everybody can get to that link. I know it's a Z link, so I just want to make sure no one seems to have any problems.
Yes, it should work. We did test it and it should work.
Great. Awesome. Okay, I'm just gonna put for Amina in here. There's another way to get to it, just in case that is helpful.
Sure, another way to get to the evaluation. Thank you for the kind words. The journals are not available commercially right now. You're
Okay.
very welcome. You're very welcome, everyone. I look forward to seeing you next week and we can journal together.
Thank you so much. And we will send out this evaluation and the registration for next week in case anybody missed it. We'll give it maybe a minute or two here for folks, but Amy, thank you so much for your wonderful presentation. And we're looking forward to seeing hopefully everyone next week. Next week will be a meeting format. So we're looking forward to having an engaging session. I think we're are okay to wrap up. Is that okay, Amy?
Sure.
Okay, and it looks like, can you share the other link about being included in the other thing you mentioned on the
Sure.
left? Oh, okay. Yep. So Sean, there you go. And we will also send out these slides. So you will get an email if you earned a CEU, you will get the slides and you will get the link to next week as well as the evaluation form. So great. Thank you very much. I'm just seeing everybody else asking for, okay, could you put the eval link in the chat? Yep, I'm going to put it in one more time here. And then again, if you all need anything or missed anything, I know it's like a lot of logistics, so please email us at Cashew if you need anything. All right, I think we will end the webinar. Please reach out to Amy if you have any questions, or again, Cashew. Thank you so much for this time together. We really appreciate it, and take good care.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.